Hello, you're listening to Storytelling Saga, the podcast that shares stories. I'm your host, Allie, and this week I'm discussing the 2007 comedy Superbad, written by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg. And I'm a big fan of Seth Rogen. I love his comedies. Obviously, he's known for his stoner humor and of course his signature laugh. But in more recent years, he's done more dramatic roles as well. And Seth and Evan are a great comedic duo. They are writing partners. They're childhood friends. They've written many movies together, TV shows. Then they produce TV shows as well. And besides his acting stuff, he does a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Seth Rogen, and this is an amazing, one of their best movies, I would say. It's well written. It's one of those timeless movies where even though there are certain things that are outdated about it, namely the flip phones, because, it was 2007, but just at the heart of it is really the friendship between Seth and Evan. Seth played by Jonah Hill and Evan played by Michael Cera. So even though it's about these two teenagers trying to get laid, and of course the trifecta of sex, drugs, and alcohol, what really makes it stand out is how true and strong their friendship is. And we see that throughout the movie, the tension between them, and it escalates more and more. The fact that because they are graduating in a couple of weeks, they're going to be going to separate colleges, with Evan going to Dartmouth and Seth feeling like Seth throughout the movie feeling like he's not as good as Evan, I'm not smart enough to get into Dartmouth. And also then when he finds out, really he had known all along, that Evan is going to be dorming with their other friend Fogel, played by Christopher Mintz-Plasse, and this is his first movie, so that's really cool too. And Fogel's so hilarious. He's got this, it's such confidence to him, despite Seth getting so pissed at him throughout the movie, and him always shitting on him, yelling at him, being shut the fuck up, Fogel, all this stuff. And the whole scene, the classic, I am McLovin, that whole scene, with his fake ID, it's so hilarious. But the whole time they're why one name? Why'd you say you're 25? It's so stupid. And then when Evan's saying, oh, well, someone could look at this ID and think, okay, another kid trying to pass for a 25-year-old, or here is McLovin, the 25-year-old Hawaiian organ donor. So stupid. And it's so funny too, how they come up with the name McLovin, such a random name. I guess obviously kind of like McDonald's in a way, because also even Superbad, how it has that relevance to McDonald's with supersizing, which was a thing in the past that evidently ended in 2004, if you recall that movie Super Size Me. But what's really cool is that Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, they based this on their own experience as high school seniors just trying to get laid, but apparently they started developing this script when they were only 13 years old. That's absolutely amazing to me, honestly. That's really, really cool. And this is considered one of the best comedies of 2000s, and not just that, but one of the best high school movies of all time. And I would agree with that, because, say, for instance, all of these movies, of each generation, so, an iconic high school movie of the 80s, of course, is The Breakfast Club. So then here in the 2000s, this movie. And yes, as I said, there are things that date it, but that just makes it, that's what's unique to the era. But still, at the core of it, things that all teenagers can relate to, of trying to just be cool and party and oh yeah, we're gonna get laid, we're so fucking cool, but really you're just still everyone in a sense is a fucking loser, everyone's just trying to be cool, and everyone's just I'm the weird kid, you know what I mean? So but what's important though, and what matters truly, is that they have each other, that they're friends. So then with that tension with Evan and Seth throughout the movie, then when Evan's saying you've held me back, man, and I couldn't have him trying to make him feel bad that he's going to be going to Dartmouth, but then he confides too later that he doesn't want to actually room with Fogel, that he's just afraid because he doesn't know anyone, and it's just that's the comfort there, because he does do well in school. And then so there is that thing that kind of separates them with yes, they're best friends and they know each other so well, they've been best friends for years, but Seth feeling he's not as good as Evan in that sense because he's not as smart as him, and Evan feeling Seth has been holding him back. So that's when the anger really comes out with them, when they're fighting the whole time. That's part of their arc throughout the movie. But There are so many things about this movie that always make me laugh. I've seen this movie multiple times. I didn't see it when it first came out in theaters. I saw it a few years after the fact. But I always say this, but I love lines that no matter how many times I hear them, they always make me laugh. And one of those lines is at the beginning of the movie when Seth is going to pick up Evan to go to school. And then he's talking about how he knows what he wants to subscribe to for porn sites for when they go to college next year. And then he's saying like all of that. And he's saying, don't make me feel weird for liking porn. You're weird for not liking porn, all that BS. And then when he just sees Evan's mom, he's just like blatantly ogling her boobs. And then afterwards when she walks away, and then he just says, man, I'm so jealous that you got to suck on those tits when you were a baby. And then Evan just says, yeah, well, at least you got to suck on your dad's dick. It's so ridiculous. It's such a fucked up thing to say. And the way the delivery is just amazing, though. It's such a nonchalant way of saying it. And what's funny, though, is that this is like really peak Michael Cera. In particular, these late 2000s films that he did. He's kind of this awkward, quiet kid and intellectual, but like there's something unique and like chill about him. And I remember like on the internet there was like this, like I guess it's a meme really, but like whatever, like someone saying, oh, Michael Cera seems like the kind of person who he just walked in accidentally and wasn't really an actor, like, so like he's not playing, like he's just playing himself basically is what people are saying. But what the hell. And what's funny too is that Jonah Hill, like then he really branched out too with more dramatic stuff as well. And also this is like Emma Stone's in this movie, and obviously she's in like so many other blockbuster hit films. And then of course you got Seth Rogen as one of the cops, Michaels, and then Bill Hader as Slater. And those two are like, oh my god, they are fucking terrible. Like, talk about people, like they should have been fired with all the shit they do just in that night. And like at one point when, I mean, it's crazy that Seth gets hit by a car twice in this movie. Slater hits him with his car, and then like at one point Michaels says, oh man, I can't believe this is happening again. Like, what the hell? Dear God. Like, that's so fucked. And they're saying, oh, we're gonna, like, you know, pin this on them. And then after all that, at the end of just their arc, just to finish out that arc, basically they take Fogel under their wing, and it's so messed up. And then it's funny, like, when they say afterwards, like, oh, we knew the whole time that you're not 21. And they're saying, well, I guess we saw a bit of ourselves in you. And then, like, they destroy their cop car in the end. And he's saying, okay, by signing this, you agree that, like, you crazy drunk man took our car, destroyed us, and like they just completely destroy it, and like they give him a gun, like it's just so fucking crazy. Dear God. And there are certain things I forgot though, like the part when they're at the liquor store and then the guy punches Fogel and runs, and then like afterwards when the woman Mindy, that poor woman, when afterwards and she's just like too overwhelmed and she's saying, I can't deal with this right now, I have a veterinary exam tomorrow. And then like the poor woman, like that makes me think, which I never thought about before, I hope she did well on her exam. Oh my gosh, like, because we don't see her at all after that. But oh man. But the part, though, that I forgot was when, like, they were asking for the description, and then she says at one point that he kind of looks like Eminem, and then Slater says, oh, okay, so circular, like she thinks an actual literal M&M, the candy, and she's like, no, you know, Marshall Mathers, like, so stupid, and it's just so dumb. And then like they're trying to like ask about the race and like pussyfooting around it. It's like, did he look like us or you? And she's like, a female, and then she's like, no, well, he looks like you. And then he's like, oh, so Jewish, okay, so we have an African Jew. And she's like, that's not what I said. Oh my God, talk about incompetent. And then, like, you know, just all this, like, bullshit, crazy stuff that Slater says to Michaels. And then when he's like, oh, you know, so Michaels always take a call at a bar because you'll get a free beer out of it. And then when they go to the party later on. And, like, the line I forgot, too, was when Michaels says, prepare to be fucked by the long dick of the law. Can you imagine? And then it's just so funny afterwards, like, when they raid the house party, then everyone's leaving. And then you just see Slater dancing. Like, dear God. So they're absolutely crazy. Also, the part when Michaels is talking about how it's like, oh, well, when I first joined the force, like talking about how it's like, oh, it's so different on TV. I thought everything would be covered in semen. And it's like, no semen. To see if the guy had ejaculated when he robbed you, like robbed the store, then we would really have a case, but no semen. Like, it's so stupid. And then he says how it's like, I just dream of one day waking up in a world covered in semen. And then Slater just goes, I mean, who doesn't? Like, so ridiculous. Bill Hader is awesome too. He's in so many great movies, but my God. And he's in that show Barry that like he created too that I've been meaning to check out. That's just a random thought. But also another hilarious moment with Slater and Michaels that I just randomly remembered, so I'm just including this, is when like they're doing that shoot off, so ridiculous, and then they hear police sirens and then Slater just screams, "Shit, the cops!" Like, really? Like, you're cops. So ridiculous, so hilarious. Anyway, so Fogel, I mean, like, it's just funny too that he's the only one, well, like, he was about to get laid, but then was interrupted, and like when the officers are like, "Oh man, you cock-blocked McLovin," but then it's just funny how the whole time they knew, obviously, that he was like had a fake ID, and it's just great. Like, dear God, freaking insane. But Fogel being like the unofficial, well, like there are that trio, but really it's like Seth and Evan. They are best friends. So with Seth, his whole thing is that he wants to be good at sex before college, and so he wants to like get with Jules, played by Emma Stone, and it's cute how they have like a genuine rapport, and like she genuinely likes him, he genuinely likes her, and also similarly with Evan, how he genuinely likes that girl Becca. And then later, like when she's wasted at the party and then like she's making out with him, and then at one point when he says to her friend, like when her friend Gabby's saying, "Oh, she's been talking about you all night," she's said something like, "Oh, I'm so gonna blow him," and then he's like, "Oh wow, really?" But then when she's like, he sees that she's wasted and he's saying, "But isn't that unethical?" And she says, "Oh, not if you're drunk too." So like that's a good thing this movie highlights, honestly, like as ridiculous and fucked up and crazy as this movie is, like him being genuinely respectful and the importance of consent, honestly, the fact that her being wasted, him knowing that that's not right, he can't take advantage of her. So like much respect to him there, because like this is his crush, he genuinely likes her. And then like Seth gives him a hard time about that, to go, "I thought you were just gonna tell her how you feel," and like he's like, like that's kind of like a douchey thing to do. And then really when he's like, "Wait, how come you didn't consult me earlier in the movie?" when he's saying, "Well, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be prepared," like when he says like he has a condom, he's like a little bottle of spermicidal lube. And then Seth, meanwhile, the whole thing, like when they go to that party with that guy, that guy's such a weirdo, but like that party and all that crazy stuff happens with Seth when he's like freaking out, because the whole like really driving point of the movie is that they got to get the booze to the party so then they can try to get laid. And really the thing that sets it all in motion is when Jules's friend asks him, "Can you get us booze?" Like, the whole thing with Fogel's fake ID. So then Seth freaking out when they see the cop car, and then they think Fogel's being arrested, but really it's because the robbery. So they don't know that, though, and Evan's genuinely concerned, and then Seth is just like, like, fuck that, fuck Fogel, we gotta, like, get more liquor somehow, and he's like, "Oh no, Jules' money," like, all this stuff, he's focused on the wrong things. It's just, and it's terrible how, like, mean he is to Fogel, like, when he screams at Fogel and stuff, and he rips on him, like, when they make fun of him for the vest that he's wearing, and he's like, "You look like Pinocchio," and then later when Evan says, "Take off that vest, man, you look like Aladdin." And that's not an insult, I love Aladdin, but that's funny. So with Seth, really, like, how he's feeling kind of, like, he feels like he's not good enough for Jules, like, later when he's at the party. And also, this movie is just great with all, like, the drunk acting, honestly, because, like, they all do it believably, honestly. Like, Becca, like, being super wasted, and also Seth with how he's wasted, like, "Oh, Jules, you drink. And she's like, "No, I don't drink." And then when he kisses her, and she's like, "I'd prefer if we do that another time." And he's saying, "Well, there is no other time. School is up." And so then it's honestly pretty sweet. Like, she wants it to be real. So that's, like, I think a really sweet thing, too. And similarly with Evan, how he genuinely likes Becca and he doesn't want to take advantage of her. So, and then poor Becca when she's getting sick, like, oh God, that sucks. And also it's funny, too, like, with Fogel, then when he's actually about to get laid. And then apparently, like, this is a, like, fun fact, if you can call it that since Christopher Mintz-Plasse was 17 at the time when they were shooting this movie, his mom, since like him being under 18, then his mom had to be there on set during the filming of those sex scenes. So talk about awkward, but you know, what are you gonna do? Also, just another random thing, those couple of scenes with Seth when he's going to try to like steal the liquor, and then there's those couples of fantasy scenes when he's just thinking about like ways he could try to do it, and it's so funny. First just paying for it, it's like, oh, thank you very much, and like, you know, it's like as if it just works out perfectly, and then like thinking about the old lady that he sees, and then when he says, oh, ma'am, can I help you with your shopping? And then she says, thank you, young man. Would you like me to buy you out? It's like, oh, that would be lovely. And then she says, would you like me to buy you alcohol? That would be lovely. And then he says, enjoy your remaining years. I will. Enjoy fucking jewels. I will. So what a ridiculous fantasy. And then, like, when, like, he's just gonna steal it, and then, like, the whole, like, other ridiculous fantasy of him, like, bleeding through his neck. Oh, and also, so, like, that's just a funny, like, sequence. Also, another thing I just thought about, a sequence to me that, like, it's like interesting character backstory, but overall doesn't really serve any purpose in the movie. The whole thing earlier on when Seth is talking to Evan about why he hates Becca, and he's like, Becca's a bitch, and he's like, I'm getting fucking sick of you talking about her. I'm thinking, like, talking about her like that. I'm starting to think you like her. And he's like, fuck no, man. And then he tells the whole story why, because he says, like, okay, when I was younger, it's not a big deal. Like, a lot of kids do this apparently, but I used to draw pictures of dicks. And, like, that whole sequence when he was a kid and all of the dick drawings. And by the way, those are some really just well-drawn pictures of super anatomically correct and detailed dicks. It's just funny, though. Like, can you imagine as an artist being commissioned for this movie to just draw endless pictures of dicks? And then what's funny is at the end of this movie, during the credits, there's just like all these other dick drawings, and at the very end it's just like a picture of, I guess, Seth and Evan like as dicks. It's just so funny. But anyway, my point though, like that whole sequence, that's the reason he hates Becca, because then like she found the lunchbox like when it falls to the ground. Well, actually no, the kid like calls him a pussy, knocks it down, then Becca picks up the drawing, screams, and like she tells on him basically, so that's why he hates Becca. So then like that never comes up again though in the movie, so it's just kind of like a random thing that didn't necessarily need to be in the movie, but whatever. And also another random thing that always makes me laugh too, that part like when they're on the soccer field playing soccer, and then the kid's like, come on man, and then he's like, oh, do you relax, it's soccer. It's like, oh, Greg, why don't you go piss your pants again? He's like, that was like 8 years ago, asshole, people don't forget. Like, terrible. So then really with Seth and Evan, after the party gets raided, and then like after poor Seth, when he just falls on Jules, like falls to the ground, like bangs into her face, and like, ow, gives that kind of hurt. She's like, what the fuck? That must have given her, like, well then she did get a bad black eye, so a bad bruise there. And then when the cops show up, Michaels and Slater, and then everyone leaves, and Seth, like looking out for his best friend, picks Evan up. So then like afterwards when they're walking, and then like they're talking to each other later with like the sleepover at Evan's house, and then like it all just leads up to them saying that they love each other. And that's another genuine important thing, I feel. The fact that it's like when he's saying, I'm not embarrassed, I'm not ashamed to say it, I love you, and they're saying like, I love you to each other. Men in general should be able to just express their love for one another like in a platonic way. That's perfectly okay and natural and healthy thing to do. Suppressing it is a bad thing. That's like toxic masculinity of like being like, oh, like you're a pussy, like, you know, stuff like that. When like you are not able to just freely express your emotions and freely say to your friends like, I love you. Because female friendships, myself all the time, like with my friends, we'd say we love you to each other, like, bye, I love you, like, you know, like you love them as a sister or as a best friend. So that's like a normal thing. And so like it's like not less normal, but less common with men every day to like just openly express and say like, love you, man, things like that. So that's a genuine, sweet, true moment between them, and of course they love each other, so that's a really nice thing. So then when they're at the mall, and then when they run into, of course, Jules and Becca, and poor Becca, like she's saying, I don't really remember much of last night, so, you know, like, thank goodness Evan was sensible enough to not sleep with her, like he didn't take advantage of her when she was inebriated. And then she sings, did I puke on you, I'm sorry. He's like, no, I saw it. And I was like, oh, get away from me, like his random like awkward stuff he says. It's so funny. Oh, and also another random awkward funny moment is earlier in the movie when they're in the hallway, and then like he accidentally punches her boob. But another like random funny line I never noticed until now is at one point, like when they're walking up, and then when they see Jules and Becca, but when they're just walking, Evan and Seth, And Seth just says, do you think alcoholics ever get hangovers? What a random thought. Never thought of that before. And also the whole scene before that when Seth is trying on pants and Evan's like, I don't know, man. I mean, it's pants. And then he's like, oh yeah, so like some male camel toe. And then he's like, oh, it's a little tight. And it's like dick, ball, dick, like a division symbol. It's just such a random conversation. But it's again just like friends being comfortable with each other, being open and honest with each other. So it's a funny thing. Then at the end, when like they just switch places, it's like, oh well, I have to go get a new comforter, and then Jules was saying like, Seth, you want to buy me some cover up, like you kind of owe me. So then, and then it's so funny too, it's like, okay, well I guess I'll see you later, you have my number, and then Seth is like, I have your information, like, oh goodness. So then like they just go there, it's like the first sign of them going their separate ways. Like, just, like, and, like, Seth looking back, and then, like, you just know it's going to be okay, that even though they are going to be going to different schools, that they're still going to be friends, that even though they're not going to see each other every day, that it's going to be okay, like, life goes on, but you're still going to be friends, that it's going to be different, but in the end, it's all going to work out. So, like, that's just a nice theme of this movie, of their friendship, that, like, it's like you're growing apart, but you still love each other, no matter what. With those sweet things, despite all of the crazy shit that goes down for them throughout this movie. So again, just a really funny, great, hilarious film. And I am McLovin. And with that is going to conclude this week's episode of Storytelling Saga. You can follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at Storytelling Saga, as well as on Twitter at Storytell Saga. You can also send me any questions, comments, or writing prompts by leaving me a message in the contact section of storytellingsaga.com or by sending me an email at storytellingsaga@gmail.com. Next week, do you ever look at someone and wonder what is going on inside their head? I will be discussing Inside Out. Until then, thank you for listening, and remember, write what you love.